All sports fans have experienced this, right? Something amazing happens on the ice and you think, man, I wish I'd have been filming. Now with the Sporfy app, you can replace that thought with a click. With just one click of a button, Sporfy captures the past 15 seconds of action so you can instantly replay and share your favorite moments all without having to film. And it's easy too. All you have to do is download the app on iOS or Android devices and experience an all-new way of filming sports highlights. Hey, Sinbin fans, if you haven't heard, the best place to get hockey memorabilia from across the SPHL, ECHL, AHL, and USA Junior Hockey Leagues is with our good friends and partners at Dash Auction. Whether you're at the game or not, you can score the bragging rights from your favorite teams and players from the palm of your hands. Are you ready to get into the action? The easiest way to do so is by texting DASH to phone number 66866. Now, what are you waiting for? Get DASH and get in the game.
3 topics, 60 minutes covering the biggest news in the ECHL. This is the 3 Periods Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Matthew Harding and Zach Porter.
Episode number 2 of the 3 Periods Podcast is on your screen and in your earbuds. Matt and Zach back again for another episode. Buddy, how you doing?
Doing well tonight. How are you, Matt?
Hanging in there. It has been a very long week.
That makes 2 of us.
What'd you say?
So that makes 2 of us.
Yeah. So hope everybody is having a good week as we close down the month of September and get ready for what will inextricably feel like a very weird October coming up. The Stanley Cup will be handed out here in just a few days, and then we're off to what would be normally on the hockey calendar, June, with the NHL draft and free agency coming down the pike here in a matter of days. For the NHL draft. Really quickly, anything standing out to you in the Stanley Cup playoffs or in the Stanley Cup Final now between the Lightning and the Dallas Stars?
You know, honestly, I thought the Dallas Stars wouldn't really fight too much in this series. They've shown a lot of resilience in the Western Conference, but I thought the Tampa Bay Lightning would honestly take it to them right from the get-go. And Dallas came out, won game 1. So a bit of a surprise for me, honestly, that the Dallas came out strong. Obviously, they lost game 2 after a good first period start by Tampa Bay. But, Tampa Bay's had their struggles with finishing in the playoffs. And it was nice to see, honestly, just for the sport aspect of it, Dallas get off to such a good start. And so far, it's a series, and that's entertaining for everybody.
Absolutely. And the Tampa Bay Lightning get their best player back into the fold tonight for Game 3 as we're recording this on Wednesday, September 23rd. Steven Stamkos back in the lineup tonight for the Tampa Bay Lightning after missing virtually all of the Stanley Cup playoffs up to that point. So the challenge, I guess, for Dallas gets a little bit taller tonight. By the way, Kelly Cup champion and former Idaho Steelheads head coach Derek Laxdal, also former Wichita Thunder head coach back in the old Cinch days. Long live the Cinch. Derek Laxdal, the assistant coach for the Dallas Stars there in Dallas this year. So he's playing he's not playing, he's coaching for a chance to win the cup down there or I guess out there in Edmonton. They're not down in Dallas and Tampa Bay. It seems weird to say that, but all the best to Laxi and the other ECHL connections on Anton Kudobin, an ECHL player in net for the Stars, and quite a few others as well. Good to see that development happen all the way up, and those players have a chance to play for the most hallowed trophy in all the sports.
Yeah, not typically our podcast format that we're trying to do, but yep. I want to say real quick, if people get a chance to go Google Derek Laxdal's journey to the NHL, it is quite the journey. He's traveled a long road to get to where he's at. As a Wichita resident, we'll say it that way. It's very cool to see Derek Laxdal where he's at today. I think he deserved that chance, in my opinion, a couple years ago. But I hope it leads to more for him. I hope he gets the chance to be an NHL head coach someday. He's a great coach. He's shown it throughout every single level of hockey that he's been at. So if you get a chance to Google Derek Laxdal and just look at his resume, it's fantastic.
Absolutely. So 3 topics for you tonight here on the show. The first is which team or teams had the best chance of lifting the Kelly Cup at the end of the season. The second one is everybody's favorite subject, ECHL Expansion. And then we'll kind of talk about what we're doing here a little bit here at the Sin Bin. A lot has happened since the COVID shutdown in March. We'll elaborate a little bit on what we're doing behind the scenes for you for the eventuality that we get back to hockey here pretty soon. So it is time for topic number 1, and that is which team or teams, and we went one from each conference, so which 2 teams had the best chance of winning the Kelly Cup at the end of the 2019-20 season. And we'll go East first and then West. Zach will give one, and then I'll give one, and then we'll do the same out West. So I'll turn the floor over to you really quick, and you can give me your one team who you thought was going to have a chance to lift the Kelly Cup at the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said we're going to start in the East?
Yes.
Okay, 1 second here. Let's get this going here. My opinion for the East was Newfoundland. I think that Newfoundland ended the season on a 5-0-0 streak, but they have the playoff experience. They have the championship experience. And the big thing to me was their goal differential. They had 240 goals scored this year. That was tops in the Eastern Conference, and they only allowed 177 goals. So my opinion, the Newfoundland Growlers had the best chance coming out of the Eastern Conference to make a run. But again, I want to go back to the playoff experience, the fact that they won a cup. So that core and that knowledge of that group is still there. And I think it would have gone a long way once they got in. They'd already secured their spot in the playoffs to making a deep run in a very stacked Eastern Conference. I mean, the Eastern Conference is always very talented. It has been for years. This isn't anything new. But, again, I think that they had the best chance with the goal differentials that they put up, the goaltending that they had, and the upfront goal scoring to really just put teams away. They showed that last year in the playoffs. They kind of just put teams away early in games, and I think they would have done the same thing this year.
You look at the Newfoundland Growlers lineup, and the one thing that I'm big on is points, number of players with points over 30, 40, and 50, because those are the kinds of players that you want on your team, not only for depth scoring, but I can put those players out in any situation and know that they have a chance of lighting the lamp. And Newfoundland had 11 of those players, including a defenseman, that had over 30 points up on that entire roster at the end of the season, led by Brady Ferguson with 63 points. And it wasn't just that they had goal scoring and wasn't just that they had, like a guy with 15 goals and 40 assists. They had balanced goals and assists. So not only did they like distributing the puck, but they also, when the opportunity presented itself, shot the puck as well. Just a very unselfish team there from the looks of it up there in Newfoundland. Real quick,
they would have ended the season having 5 guys with over 50 points.
Wow.
To your point there. So I mean that's not just a top line deal like you've seen in other cities, one of which I'll actually bring to light here in a little bit, but it wasn't just a top line. As you mentioned, there's a defenseman in there, but there's 5 guys that would have ended the season with 50 plus points for Newfoundland. I just think they have that ability. Defense wins championships, all good and well, cute, but unless you have a defense like the old school Colorado Eagles, the Allen Americans in certain years, where they can shut down anybody with the goaltending that can shut down anybody at any time. Defense does not win championships. Putting the puck in the back of the net ultimately wins championships. And this team can score, and they can score in bunches.
And to your point about the goaltending, Zach, Angus Redmond had a 16-2 mark with Newfoundland, a .255 goals against average, and a .907 save percentage. Was having unquestionably the best season of his career. Parker Gagan had a 10-4 mark with a pair of shutouts on the year and a 1.81 goals against average. So that team was stacked front to back for the Growlers and head coach John Snowden. And no doubt in my mind, would they have given it a serious charge to repeating as champions in the ECHL. But I'm going to see your Newfoundland Growlers, and I'm going to take you down south to their Eastern Conference final opponent from the 2018 playoffs, and that is the Florida Everblades. They finished the season 8-1 in their last 10. Again, to that point about players over 30 points, they had 9 players on the active roster with 30 points, and I believe they had 11 on the inactive when you combined the inactives as well with over 30 points. They were stacked in net as well. Cam Johnson and Ken Appleby combined for a 40-13-4-2 mark with 5 shutouts on the year, a .236 goals against average, and a .919 save percentage. And in a division where South Carolina was the cream of the crop, they went 4-4 against South Carolina during the season and kept pace with them all the way up to the end of the season, finished tied for the South Division lead with 92 points. South Carolina with the edge there based on having one more win. So, those are that would be the reasoning for me to think that Florida had the best chance. Not only were they 4-4 against South Carolina, but they also won their only meeting of the year against Newfoundland. Reading would have been a dark horse coming out of there. I think it would have been a very long dark horse to come out of that East mix. And South Carolina, for me, always just left something more on the table. I just didn't feel like they played physical enough to come out of the East. So that's why I thought Florida, and to your point as well, Newfoundland as well, could have been one of the 2 teams that came out of the East.
One thing that I think really set back Florida throughout the year, though, is their penalty minutes. 5th in the league in penalty minutes per game at an average of 14.92 penalty minutes a game with a league-wide average of 12.87. So more than 2 minutes per game penalty for the Florida Everblades. But on top of that, they're 4th overall in penalty minutes, and a significant portion of their penalties were not majors. Fort Wayne led in majors as far as 46, but Florida only had 23, so they had half the amount of majors and were still 5th in the league in penalty minutes per game and then 4th in overall penalty minutes. You look at something like that, how does that translate into the playoffs? You cannot win playoff games sitting in the box. When you're averaging almost 15 penalty minutes per game, you're going to have a lot of discipline going into the playoffs to stay out of the box. Otherwise, you are in big trouble, especially in a 7-game series. You talked about them winning their only matchup against Newfoundland, but you put them in a 7-game series against Newfoundland with those kind of penalty minutes, you're in some trouble for a team that can score like that. So that was the only thing I saw. You and I talked off the air about our choices, but Florida, in my opinion, really would struggle in the playoffs if they couldn't stay out of the box.
And to your point about staying out of the box, the penalty kill success rate for Florida last year was 19th best in the ECHL at an 80.7% kill rate. Again, to your point, if you're spending time in the box, you better be good at killing the penalties, and they weren't.
Yeah, so I mean that's I think we both could probably flip a coin. Obviously, we would have loved to have seen how this season played out, which is why we're talking about this topic. But if it played out and the trend continued, I have a hard time believing in a 7-game series that Florida would go toe-to-toe if they were in the box for 15 minutes a game and giving up, the 19th worst, or I guess 19th best penalty kill in the league against a team like Newfoundland that scores in absolute barrels.
Yeah, that is one potent offense that John Snowden assembled up there in Newfoundland last year. It'll be interesting to see when we return to hockey what the makeup of that Newfoundland team is going to look like. Several missing pieces from last year's team already going overseas for this coming season. Again, when we return to hockey, we'll know a lot more about that. Out west, I'll lead off with the West, and I had to look at what a team that is really a staple of contending for championships in the last 5 to 6 years, and that is the Toledo Walleye. They were 37-17-4-1 at the season's end, had 4 games in hand on division-leading Cincinnati, and had a 7-3 record against the Cyclones. Could have very easily clinched that Central Division and been a top 2 seed in the Western Conference playoffs. They finished 8-2 in their last 10. They had 5 players on the active roster with more than 30 points, and Billy Christopoulos was a real wall in the net for the Walleye, 24-3-3 in his rookie campaign with a .229 goals against average and a .932 save percentage. And not only did they play a quote-unquote cleaner brand of hockey, only 748 penalty minutes on the year, when they were in the box, they were killing off those chances as well, killing off 87.8% of the penalties that they took during the regular season, and had a 23.3% power play efficiency. So if you were in the box, they were making you pay for it as well. I really think Toledo would have had a really good chance of coming out of the West there, and yeah, that's my pick anyway.
Well, rather than debate this like most shows these days are, I will actually agree with you to some extent. I do have my own pick, but the Western Conference, you and I are both what I would consider more knowledgeable in the Western Conference. The team we cover is in the Western Conference. So I think there's a handful of teams in the Western that if anybody's listening right now that is a fan out of those cities, they're sitting there going, what the heck, man? Allen, Cincinnati, there's a handful of teams that could have been in this, Allen, Cincinnati, Idaho, Fort Wayne, as always. Allen has a very strong case. Allen, when we saw them in Wichita, was a spectacle to behold.
Yes.
And the crazy thing is how they started out. And if my memory is serving me correctly, it's been a long time since I've seen an ECHL game, but last season and this season as well, the Allen Americans started out very slow, and then all of a sudden, like an 18-wheeler, they are bulldozing down the highway and just picking up wins and goals left and right. So, Not my choice, but again, Western Conference, we could pick a handful of teams. My choice, quickly, would be the Utah Grizzlies. I know this is a dark horse. They're not one of the top 5, or one of the top teams in that conference, but the way that Utah started out the season and the way they finished is 2 completely opposite teams. And they had so much going for them that the goal differential, 207 goals for, 164 goals against. In comparison, Allen let in 195 goals. So I really think that Utah had something special going. And if they could have slipped into a higher spot and maybe gotten some home ice advantage, they're lethal at home. And they had a top line that, in my opinion, was one of the sickest top lines I've seen in the league in quite some time.
Oh, yeah.
Every time that Jason Miles and I called a game, I was almost sick to my stomach at opening faceoff, because it was almost a guarantee that line would come out and either draw a penalty or score a goal. And they were so good. And again, I talked earlier about having depth in scoring, but that one line alone was lethal, and I think could have done some damage in the playoffs. And so as a dark horse pick for the Western Conference, I went with the Utah Grizzlies.
That team really took off after the addition of Martin Ouellette to that lineup on a trade from Atlanta. And it just seemed like the switch just flipped. Ouellette went, I think, 12-2 in a 14-game stretch for them, went up to Providence, and then came back and picked up right where he left off. And that, you're absolutely right. That team would have made a deeper run than they had in recent years. I don't know if they would have gotten past Allen, but they would have given Allen everything that the Americans could have wanted and more in that second round series, I think. But
one thing I forgot to mention: top 10 in both power play percentage and penalty kill percentage for Utah as well. Even with the slow start, their special teams were fantastic. As you mentioned, Martin Ouellette was a stalwart between the pipes, and then that top line. I think they had every little piece to put together a good series. Again, I'm not saying it was a done deal, but I don't think that they were a team to even, bat an eyelash at. They were somebody that really would have done some damage, and I think surprised quite a few people with the way that they played.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, the one thing that I think we want to look at is Barry Jansen brought this up. He's at ECHL Stats on Twitter. He also writes for us here at the Sin Bin. And, the last 8 Kelly Cup winners, only one has won the Brabham Cup, and that was Alaska back in 2014 when they finished first in the mountain and first overall. And I think they won that Brabham Cup championship by 2 points, I think. So, but the thing that Barry points out here is that everybody who finished, that if you finished in the top 8 of the league, chances are you were a solid Kelly Cup contender. And I think that's borne out. I don't think that you can come up as an 8 seed or a 6 seed or a 4 seed or even a 4 seed in the conference playoffs in the ECHL and go up there and lift the Kelly Cup with as loaded as those teams are, because these are perennially good teams. Newfoundland, Colorado, Allen, Alaska Reading was really good in their heyday, and Florida as well. So, just your thoughts quickly on finishing in the top third, I guess, of the league, and then having that equal playoff success.
Well, I mean, it's mathematics. It honestly is. You look at winning percentage and how teams fare. A team that has a 650 winning percentage compared to a team that's just over 500 is winning 15% more of their games. It's mathematics. It's statistics are mathematics. I get that. But when I say what I'm about to say, I don't mean to sound dumb, but it's not just statistics in the aspect of goals and win percent or goals and save percentage or penalty kill. It's truly about the mathematics of the winning percentage. You want to, sports these days are so analytical that, you look in baseball with WAR and all these adjusted stat categories. But what it all comes down to is win percentage, and teams that finish higher go into the playoffs. And that's why playoffs are seeded the way that they are, so that those top teams have a better chance to get further because they did better in the regular season. So absolutely.
Yeah. And then, we stress a lot, and I think that this could not be more true in the ECHL than anywhere else. Up in the National Hockey League, I think the parity is so that prevalent across the league that, you can see a New York Islanders, like a 6 seed, knocking off big, higher seeded teams. But I think if you look at just how important home ice is in the ECHL, this will roll right into Matty's stat of the night here.
A new segment we're rolling out.
Right. Yeah. So Matty's stat of the night is this. If you look at the last 8 Kelly Cup champs, they all had an average win difference of +13 and a road win difference of 5.6. And every Kelly Cup champion dating back to 2012 had more than 22 home wins and at least 16 road wins. So you have to have a game that is portable, not only at home, but I can go on the road and play the same style of game there. And I think that's what made the New York Islanders so good this year, was the fact that regardless of where we're playing, bubble, parking lot, ocean, iceberg, asphalt, and 100 degrees, it doesn't matter. We've got a game that is portable, and we could take it anywhere and play and have success.
Well, it's easy to do that when you have 16 different home arenas like the Islanders do. The Barclays Center, Nassau. I'm pretty sure they played on like a park out in Long Island. I don't know, but
on a beach.
But I completely agree. Back to Utah, plus 11 at home, plus 6 on the road, just about, meshes in with Matty's stat of the night. But that also goes to show the parity of the league, with Utah being down in the 5th, 6th seed of that conference, but still being a positive team both home and on the road. Back when Wichita was making finals appearance after finals appearance and at least playoff appearance, they were not a good road team, and it showed. And you could win at home, but you couldn't win on the road, and that is what killed you. And they go to Game 7 in Allen and lose. That you have to be able to win on the road, and I think it's extremely important in the ECHL because of guys living. The apartments living there, they live together. They everybody's close together, and it's not like in the NHL where you have a house and guys have houses across the way, and they're all spread out in the city that they're in. But in the ECHL, you almost live in the same apartment building, let alone complex, and there's a lot more of that camaraderie, the team mentality, and so being able to win on the road and still have that thinking of I got good sleep last night, my pregame routine is the same. Go out and just play the game tonight like we're at home is so important, and that's a great stat to bring out, Matt.
And then just to use the two conference leaders at the end of the year, South Carolina and Allen, the Stingrays had a home win differential of plus 10, a road win differential of plus 16. They had a 25-9 mark on the road this year. Allen had a home win differential of plus 13 and a worse road win differential of just plus 7. So both of those teams, had they won the Kelly Cup, would have fit right into that model.
Absolutely.
So that is our first segment. Sound the horn on that. There you go. And it is time for period number 2. And it is, again, everybody's favorite topic, ECHL Expansion. You may have heard about it last week, but the group owned by Newfoundland Growlers owner Dean McDonald, Deacon Sports and Entertainment, announced that they will have an ECHL franchise in 21-22 play at the Extreme Arena in Coralville, Iowa, which is along Interstate 80 between the Quad Cities on the east and Des Moines on the west. The franchise is owned by Deacon Sports and Entertainment, but it is important to say here as we begin the discussion that no formal franchise has been awarded by the ECHL, neither to Coralville or to the other franchise that is trying to get its legs underneath it in Trois-Rivières, Quebec as well. And that is also a group that is run by Deacon Sports and Entertainment. We tried to reach out to the writer who broke the story, Jeff Johnson, and we're hoping to get Growlers owner Dean McDonald on for a future podcast episode. So the first thing that I look at here when we talk about expansion again is, where do we slot Coralville in? Because you can slot them either in the Central Division of the Western Conference, or you can fit them out there in the Mountain Division again. So first of all, just give me your thoughts on the overall prospect of having another team out here in the Western Conference and potentially a team up in Canada.
Well, I mean, I think, first of all, your point about letting the listeners know we are not breaking news. This is not actually set into stone. These are reports, and once we hear something from the league itself, then we will probably expand on this a little bit more. But I think that it's very important for the Western Conference. I mean, I want to see a little bit more of a mesh between the Western Conference, which is very spread out. I mean, from Kansas City all the way to literally the West Coast. And then the Eastern Conference is kind of bundled up between, from the St. Louis border, north and south, all the way to Florida. So I think it's good to kind of have that gap bridged a little bit with Coralville, but let's just call it what it is, Iowa City. But I think, first of all, the arena is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good location as far as the size of the metro area of Iowa City. And I think it's like I said, a nice gap between the Eastern and Western Conference that team can then go play some of the Eastern Conference teams. That's one thing since entering the ECHL that I wish would be a little bit better for teams that are in the West is playing a lot of the Eastern Conference teams that we don't get to see. Your Floridas, your Orlandos, your Reading, teams of that nature that you don't get to see very often. I mean, heck, even Brampton, who was in the old Central, you saw more being in the Central League than you do with them in their current state. So, or in the current outline of the ECHL. So, I think that, first of all, with Coralville, I think it's a great bridge between the two. Like I said, I'm repeating myself, but the arena is beautiful. They have a great starting point there with that. It's not like they're going to have to do work on the arena anytime soon. So they got a great place to start there. And then up in Canada, the more you expand into Canada, I think the stronger the league gets, honestly. You look at the alignment with the NHL and the expansion into Canada, which was started in the Central, and now, obviously Brampton came as a part of the consolidation to the ECHL, but then you add Newfoundland, and I think Canadian expansion really just adds to that straight line that you want to have with the NHL, the AHL, and the ECHL. And, it's kind of like the SPHL. If there's going to be what you would call a single A affiliate eventually at some point, they're going to need to expand their footprint, which they have been doing. So I think it's great for the ECHL to get a Canadian team. I think it's great for them to have a team in Quebec, if that ends up becoming the case. And overall, I love it. I love these two cities as far as where they're putting them, and hopefully the ownership groups for both are good, and they have a strong showing. Just like, the expansion teams that each ECHL has brought on the last couple of years, they're all, fantastic organizations. They're what back in the day we would call model organizations already, and they're just starting. So it's great. And it leads them one step closer to having an affiliate with every NHL team.
Yeah. And, at first blush, I was like, why would the league put a third Canadian franchise or third franchise north of the border? But then the more you think about it and the more it just makes sense. Like, Newfoundland is really on an island out there in New Brunswick and St. John's. Then you have Brampton, who's in the greater Toronto area, but that's still a lift for people to get over the border. And now you have a third team in Quebec, and it makes travel so much easier. Now you're aligned with one of the original 6 franchises potentially in the Montreal Canadiens. And it also adds another franchise there to feed into the American Hockey League as well. So all of this makes sense from that angle. The Coralville, I really love the idea of having the franchise along Interstate 80. We'll talk about that in just a minute, but I really love the idea of having that franchise that is centrally located to really pretty much anybody. Outside of Utah and Idaho, that's going to be a drive for anybody. The most that they would have to travel outside of Utah and Idaho, like I said, is 700 miles, and that's to Rapid City. So, that's as centrally located as you can get. I don't think that there's anything that could be said here in the negative, maybe with the exception of, why don't you let the league first announce that? But I mean, that's all semantics at this point. What you're trying to do is you're trying to tell people, okay, hockey, this league and this brand of hockey is coming. And if you are wanting to see what we did, look at what we did with Newfoundland. If that franchise in Coralville and the franchise in Trois-Rivières can be as successful year one as Newfoundland was, then it's an absolute success. Obviously, you're not going to have two champions, but if both of those teams make really deep runs in the playoffs, I think that is a tremendous success.
Well, and even I don't even think you have to have deep playoff runs. It's just that initial burst of showing a new fan base that you can win.
Right.
And even if that means going 500, I mean, heck, there's times that, fans here in Wichita say, well, if we can get to 500, that'll be a successful year. It's just fans want to see that winning. And you look at Maine and Newfoundland and the success that they've had. And although Maine hasn't had the championship yet that Newfoundland has, but just the overall organizational success, I'm curious to see what the fans are like in Trois-Rivières and see if, they have a fan base like Montreal. I mean, honestly, I'm a Devils fan, but Montreal is a bucket list home game to go to for as a NHL fan. If they can get some sort of a fan base like that, goodness gracious. I mean, we look back to the old days of the Colorado Eagles. I'll never forget the number 5,289.
Yeah.
And that's, if that's so impressive, and it's great that the league you're not trying to overshoot. You have teams like Tulsa has 19,000, seat arena. Wichita has a 14,000 seat arena, but the franchises that they're bringing in, they know it's a smart business decision for everybody. The arenas aren't going to have crazy lease agreements or nightly fees. It's going to be a small, compact, but very populated arena. And, it's not the old NITEC Sports Center where you had 1,900 fans was a sellout. These are, 6,000, 7,000 seat arenas that pack a punch with sound, and they're new. And I think it's great for the league. Again, the closer the ECHL can get to having a full alignment with the NHL, the better. And this expansion into Quebec is one thing closer with Montreal. Again, allegedly, potentially, whatever you want to call it. And, you would imagine maybe an Iowa Wild, Minnesota Wild type alignment for Coralville. So those speculations can come at a later date. But my point is, it brings two additional farm clubs, if you will, to the ECHL for the NHL. And 10, 15 years ago, you would have asked you or I both if either league that we covered would have been this close to a total alignment with the NHL, we probably would have laughed. And so the ECHL is doing absolutely a fantastic job of finding good cities, finding good ownership groups, making the locations viable, but then putting it in line with an NHL affiliation. Yeah,
absolutely. And to your point about the affiliation with potentially with Iowa and the Iowa Wild in Des Moines and the Minnesota Wild, I think that's that's like a sock, or that's like a foot fitting in a shoe. 115 miles between Coralville and Des Moines on Interstate 80. You can make that drive in an hour and a half if you had to.
Yeah, I mean, guys could literally get called up on a game day and be at the arena within an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
An hour and 30 minutes of game time. I mean, of leaving. And then, from Iowa to Minnesota, again, not a bad trek if you had to drive, let alone, I'm sure they would fly you, but still, if you had to drive, that's a great affiliation. Same thing with the NHL. So it makes sense. Again, kudos to the ECHL if all of this comes to fruition, of finding the locations, finding the ownership groups, and then finding the alignment that makes sense for everybody. I mean, it makes sense for the A, the N, and now the E.
Yes, and it also makes sense as well for the SP as well, because think about this. If you are really smart with branding, you could say, and you could pitch this to your players if you're Dave Schnitzny in with the Quad City Storm. Hey, look, you come here, you could be on your first step of the hockey highway. You get you show out here. Your next stop is in Coralville. Then your next stop is Des Moines, and eventually you could end up in the National Hockey League up the road in Minnesota. I really think, like, once upon a time I thought, man, if Columbus could be the affiliate of Cincinnati and Cleveland, then man, Interstate 71 in Ohio could be the hockey highway. I really think Interstate 80 could be the minor league hockey highway across Iowa in a few years. Just a matter of time. And if you're a member of the Quad City Storm or the Iowa Wild or even this new franchise in Coralville, that has to be something you're salivating about, is something that you can pitch to players to come to cornstalk capital of the world in Iowa and come play hockey. Because let's face it, recruiting is the name of the game. You have to give them something. You have to sell them on something. And it's the same in recruiting as it is in real estate. It's location, location, location. You have to make it viable. And if you just say, hey, look, this is your spot on the hockey highway. Next destination is here, 115 miles. Boom, another 240 miles to Minneapolis. 4 hours later, you're playing in the show. All you got to do is show out. I think that could be a really, really solid recruiting tool.
Yeah, I mean, you have to – any team has to sell their city as well. Nobody is going to go sign up to play in a dump just because they want to. And that's not calling any city or team or anything a dump, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to go ideally play in a place that has, poor facilities, that has nothing to do around your living complex, that has, you want to play somewhere where it's convenient, where it's nice to live, and where you can thrive. Right. You live in better circumstances, you tend to play better. And, that's not saying more expensive or anything like that. It's just, if you have nice amenities around you with the city and everything else, you're more happy, and more happy equals better playing. And so, yeah, it's a great point about selling the location, and how can't imagine how hard it is to try and recruit to the middle of Iowa or to the middle of, Wichita, Kansas. I'll use my own city as a laughing stock. Here, come to Kansas to play hockey. I'm good, thanks.
Yeah.
Guys get here and they don't realize the size of the city and
right.
the things there are to do. It's Kansas. You made a joke about corn. Everything here is wheat. If you ask anybody else, but then you get here and you're like, wow, this is actually a fairly large city. There's lots of stuff to do. So, yeah, I mean, guys have to sell. Organizations have to sell coming to play hockey in Iowa. And, again, that's a beautiful arena. It ain't going to be hard to sell guys to come play there. And then with the idea of, man, you're not going to have to drive 6 hours to get to our affiliate. You can literally hop in a Ford Pinto and be comfortable in an hour and 15 minutes.
And here's the other aspect of this to think about as well. And our Barry Jansen has written about this extensively during his off-season articles. Steve Martinson is in the last year of a contract in Allen. if you are able, if that franchise, which he's wanted, they've expressed an interest in sticking with Steve Martinson wherever he goes, whether it's Allen or another potential franchise. If he moves to that new Coralville franchise, you don't even need to sell the spot. I mean, you would. That's the added bonus is you're playing for the best coach to ever coach minor league hockey in Steve Martinson, I think. So that's another added bonus right there.
Yeah, I mean, that's another big thing for, especially at the ECHL level, guys need to know that if they're going to come here and play here all year, that they want to win.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to come here, not get called up, and then lose. The last thing somebody at this level wants to do is end up bottom of the league and not called up. If you're bottom of the league, you want to at least get called up and have the opportunity to play the A. So, if you have a new franchise that hires a Steve Martinson type coach, you're darn near guaranteed success right off the bat. That's also an easy sell, like you just mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll continue to watch this situation closely. Again, based on our latest reporting, there has been no franchise awarded to either Coralville or Trois-Rivières, Quebec by the ECHL. But when that happens, you will hear about it first right here at thesinbin.net. And that closes our second period. All right, one more period to go here as we are moving through episode number 2 here of the 3 Periods podcast, and kind of want to toot our own horns here a little bit. We already just tooted the big horn, but a lot of improvements have been going on here with the site since we last talked to you in, I guess it was March. We've done the podcast here, but a lot of improvements, namely being reunited with my best bud Zach and doing the podcast with him. On top of a lot of other stuff. So we're going to spend the next few minutes here kind of talking about some of the improvements that we've had here at the site over the last couple of weeks, last couple of months, really. Goodness.
Yeah.
I'm gone.
It's in quarantine.
Right.
With the rest of us.
Right.
Typically, when we do podcasts, I would literally be sitting across the desk from you with my own microphone that's technically yours, and we would be doing this in person. But you and I sat down late January, early February, and kind of started brainstorming ideas, just because that's what I do. I for the length of our friendship, I've just put bugs in your ear to try different things, including writing. And I mean, it seemed to have worked out pretty well. So, and then I think the big turning point was you and I took a trip to Kansas City to watch the Mavericks play, just to get away and have some road time to talk and have some clear thoughts without having fans around or anybody else. And, the idea came about of utilizing our app, which has been a great resource for the Sin Bin for a couple years now, to a higher extent, to a better level. And the one thing that really stuck out to me was how apps that are on the major league level, whether that be hockey, baseball, football, or other, utilize rather live highlights. Guy hits a walk-off home run, you will get a notification with the video of that home run probably less than 10 minutes later. It's very impressive in today's technology and day and age, not to sound like an old guy, that you can get highlights sent directly to your phone that you literally have to press one button and you can see it for free. And and you and I talked, and I was like, let's do it. Let's do something like that. And with our help, with the help of Sporfy, one of our great partners, which, by the way, when we open the podcast, we have Sporfy and Dash listed. That's not just for us to have an ad read or some sort of commercial. Those are great partners for us. We are actually working on something very cool with Dash right now. Please check out our sponsors, the people that support the sinbin.net. But Sporfy, who have been very accommodating since I came on board in late February, early March. I mean, they're unbelievably easy to talk to, but we are going to be working together to get push notifications sent out to fans' phones of highlights, things that you need to see within games, minutes or within an hour after it happens. And we have a team in place that is going to make that happen. We've already tested it out to a certain degree. I'm extremely excited about it. And I know that's kind of the first thing we've talked about. There's bigger things that we've done, but I am so excited to be a part of this and a part of it back with you. And then we look down in the lower right-hand corner of our screen here, and there's our brand new spiffy logo. And really since the pause, if you will.
I don't know. I was trying to point to it.
There we go. Since the pause, the Sin Bin and our entire staff have been hitting the ground running with ideas of what we could do to improve the fan experience and to be the best site that we can be for fan interaction, for news, information, highlights, podcasts, multimedia, interviews, anything that you can think of. And, it really shows with what we've done over the last couple months, Matt.
Yeah, it is. We've grown the podcast family now probably 4 or 5-fold. We have a dedicated interview podcast, which we'll talk about here in a minute. The In the Corners podcast graduated up and became the solo American Hockey League podcast, or our friends Cece and Sean over there anchoring that. And then you have the Colorado Eagles podcast, Tape to Tape with Cece and Scott McDonald. And it's not only the Sin Bin developing these on their own, but it's also the Sin Bin working with other media outlets as well to make these happen. So, we're getting our name out not only in the podcast world, but we're also doing it in the media world as well. And then we're obviously rededicating ourselves to a video platform and the logo. And I got to say, none of this new era stuff that we've done is possible without our webmaster, Matt Thomas, who has been an absolute horse, working day and night, literally for months, trying to get everything lined up. And then even when it's not lined up, he's still working twice as hard to get it figured out. I could not ask for a finer webmaster and a finer human being to work with than Matt Thomas. He is the bee's knees, I guess, for what we do. But
he's the quintessential first on the job, last to leave. I mean, his work ethic has been phenomenal. He does it with little to zero thanks. And even when he is thanks, he brushes it off, and for somebody that is never visible to the reader, he is the biggest part of the Sin Bin that is not seen, heard, or read. Right. And I completely agree with that. I echo your thoughts. By the way, don't want to forget the Syracuse Speaks podcast.
Yes.
We got a great episode of that coming out. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we back to you on this topic, but I mean, we've done so much, it's easy to forget some of the things we've done.
It is.
But yeah,
it is. And the, not only are we growing the podcast platform as well, but we're refortifying the house on the writing side with huge additions to our writing team, 4-fold growth in our writing staff in the American Hockey League. Our ECHL group is really good. And I will highly recommend this book. ECHL to NHL, as written by our very own Griffin Germond. It is a very, very good book that details the entire process of how players go from the ECHL to the NHL. And hopefully we'll have Griffin on the podcast here soon to talk about that book. But
quickly here for fans of the ECHL, this is an ECHL-centered podcast.
Yeah.
But if you've wanted more information on your team's affiliates at the AHL level, the AHL side of the sinbin.net is the place to go. CC Hockley has done a fantastic job of growing that team, and not only growing them, but mentoring them, communicating with them, and they are kicking out some absolutely awesome content on the regular. And so if you've been hungry for more information about the affiliate that's up above you guys in the AHL, go check out our AHL page as well.
Yes, absolutely. So, but I think all of that, above all of that, and working with you again would have been one of the crowning achievements of this long layoff, because I got to admit it felt empty not working with you for a while. But the No Holding Back podcast with Ben Holden, if you've not watched that or listened to it, it is amazing. And by the way, how cool is it that a guy who calls college football games on Saturday afternoons for the Tiffany Network is working with us? Like, that's really cool.
You can't say enough great things about our team, but I mean, I love everybody that we work with. I'm so grateful to have the team around us that we do. And Ben fits in like a glove, but with all this background and knowledge and resources and contacts. And Ben reached out to us, and that was the coolest part about it. When we actually talked with Ben, we were waiting for the caveat of some sort of promise, or something that he expected from us. But the guy loves the sport of hockey so much, and it's clear. I mean, literally, it brought tears to his eyes talking about the sport of hockey. And it was a no-brainer that, as you mentioned, a guy that has highlights on YouTube of him calling college football games is now doing a premier interview podcast with some of the biggest names across the sport of hockey. And that podcast is only going to get bigger and better. And Ben is a consummate professional that we're unbelievably happy to have working with us. But Ben is literally the example of this team in general. The consummate professionals, the hunger for the game of hockey, the dedication to their cities, their location. Ben loves being from Michigan. He's got a lot of pride from that, and that goes throughout our team. And I joked with CC the other day, I'm still the new guy as far as a lot of things go, but I feel like I've been missing out because this team is unbelievable, and we've capped off what has been a very unfortunate situation with the coronavirus and COVID-19, but we've made the most of it. That's something that you and I have preached to each other, of making the most of this time off that we've unfortunately been given. But that's all we've tried to do, is make this site bigger and better. Some of it we've had to go out and get. Others have fallen into our laps. Might just be a 2-time Emmy Award winner. Don't know, but he fell into our lap. So, again, I'm thrilled to be here. I know we're finishing up here, but I encourage fans to get a hold of us on social media, to let us know what you guys want to hear, what you want, written about, what you want us to talk about on the podcast, who you want Ben to interview, who you want CC and the guys up in the AHL to talk about. Get a hold of everybody that we have involved and interact with us, and let us know, because this is all for the fans. And Matt, when you and I started 10 years ago, our goal was to give fans a better perspective of their teams. And 10 years later, that's still what we're trying to do. And I'm glad to be doing it with you, buddy.
Absolutely. Could not echo that any better if I tried 3 different times. So, Absolutely. And I'm fired up. I am just as fired up now as I was in March when we went to Kansas City and saw the last hockey game of the year against the Mavericks.
Who would have known?
Yeah, who would have known? I'm fired up. Like this just gets me going. So if you are interested in writing with us, visit our website at thesinbin.net. And then there is a Team Sinbin tab there. Just follow that, and that'll get you to the application that will send it to us. And conversely, if you are interested in advertising with the Sinbin as well, there is that spot for you available as well at the sinbin.net. Any final
plaster your business name anywhere you want?
Yes.
Just click on that.
Indeed.
That button.
Indeed. Just a couple of ECHL notes before we close up shop on the show tonight. The Mariners revealed their third jerseys, which they will wear on Sunday afternoon games. Griffin will write about that in his next article coming out on the site very soon. And the Norfolk Admirals have added the title of general manager to assistant coach Ryan McGinnis's plate. He was named to that position Tuesday. He is the youngest general manager of 33 years old. He won a Kelly Cup with the Florida Everblades in 2011-2012 and played 5 seasons in the ECHL, including a 17-game stint with the Admirals back in 2009-2010. He was the assistant coach for the Indy Fuel for a pair of years from 2006 to 2018. So that is all the news and views that are fit to print across the ECHL for this time. Any final thoughts here?
That's it, buddy. I'm good to go.
All right, man. Well, that is it. The final horn will sound. And that is going to do it for us on this edition of the 3 Periods podcast. For Zach, I'm Matt. Thanks very much for joining us, and we'll talk to you again here in a couple of weeks. So long, and stay healthy, everybody.
What a rush.
You've been listening to the 3 Periods podcast. Do you have topics you would like discussed? Hit us up on Twitter at